What's the neurological effects of having higher levels of free and total testosterone?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And this is kind of like gets into a really like emerging field that I think we're learning more about called neuroendocrinology, right?
Mhm.
I'm a professor of psychiatry, and generally the mainstay of treatment for bread and butter, if you will, depression and anxiety is to increase serotonin, right? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors or SSRIs. People might have heard of Prozac, things like that. Block, just like clomiphene blocks the estrogen receptor, blocks the reuptake of serotonin, increases serotonin. And so that's been one way of obviously improving mood. But I think we've come more and more to a conclusion that like serotonin is not just the happiness molecule, and it's not as simple as increasing serotonin. We found that like hormones such as testosterone do have these neurological effects, as you mentioned. And so there is a wide range of effects. Some of it we know anecdotally, interestingly, when you turn off testosterone. So, for instance, there are some folks who have sort of severe prostate cancer, and one of the treatments for it is these androgen blocking drugs that literally shut off your testosterone. If you're really interested, there's a New York Times article, it was published back in the 90s. They interviewed a guy who basically was like, what is it like to have no testosterone? And he reported really interesting effects. He was like, all of my motivation and drive just sort of disappeared. And I felt like I was just like living in a flat society. I had flat affect. Like I didn't care about anything. Versus when your testosterone is high, you care. The other thing is like motivation seems to be tied to testosterone. One way I like to describe it is testosterone makes effort feel good. Like when you're doing hard work, when your testosterone low, it feels effortful. It feels like a grind. It feels painful. Versus
Mhm.
when testosterone high, it's like instead of a threat, it's a challenge. You're like, yeah, bring it on. I like the hard. Like this is
Yeah.
interesting. Like
Yep.
it's not boring. And so you have a more of a tendency to what's called approach versus avoid difficulty, which is obviously critical to succeeding in a very competitive society. Like a lot of the work that we do is very, very hard. So there has a motivational enhancement effect. And then there's an increase in risk taking, interestingly, which may be good or bad, I guess, if you're a stock trader or not, and the type of trading that we do want to do. There's associational research that shows that, for instance, stock traders that have higher testosterone take more risks.
Mhm.
Like I said, you can interpret that for what you will, but I think maybe in an entrepreneurial kind of environment, the desire to take more risk, I would argue, directionally is a good thing in getting people to not be as afraid of taking risk. And I think it makes people, the reason it does that, it probably makes people more confident. One last thing I'll say, there's an unfortunate mythology that testosterone is going to make you aggressive and a jackass. It's not true. A lot of that is based on steroid users who jack their testosterone levels or abusing TRT to levels that are like 3 to 5,000.
Or
It's not
or
humans
tre-
normal.
they're using Trenbolone. They're not.
Exactly.
They're using the
Which,
real stuff,
yeah,
the stuff that's
very
made for
aggressive.
horses.
Interestingly, when they've done TRT studies where they get people to normal levels of testosterone, people actually become friendlier, which is interesting, right? Not more aggressive. They're actually friendlier,
Mm.
calmer, better mood. And it kind of makes sense anecdotally if you think about it, because if you think about like a naturally high testosterone guy, like a warm father figure is probably the best description. It's a strong and silent man. It's someone who's like secure in their masculinity. They don't need to mouth off. They don't need to like prove anything by like get into a fight at the bar. Those are low testosterone men, in my opinion, and they're overcompensating by like trying to prove. So this is like short man syndrome, right? That's the short guy at the bar who's starting all the fights. It's not the jack 300-pound dude because he's like, I don't need anything to prove. I look good. I feel good. My masculinity, my testosterone is good. So I actually encourage people to think about it that way. It shouldn't be associated with like aggression or douchebaggery, all these bad things.
Mhm.
Generally, when people find security, whether psychologically or physiologically, they actually tend to be a lot more chill because they're like, I'm good, and I don't need to go out of my way to prove it.
Gotcha. Okay. So for drive and motivation, risk taking, confidence, increasing your testosterone is going to be drastically a big part of your life and make your work. Let's focus on just financially. Your work is going to have some type of increase because of all those factors, but not really like critical thing. It doesn't actually like make you smarter, make your neurons work better, fire faster. It just puts you in the place to okay, now we're going to work and I'm motivated. But it isn't actually like you're not going to learn Mandarin Chinese faster if you have high testosterone.
I wish. So I'll tell you an interesting thing. There was a study, I believe it was done in Turkey, of medical students, and it looked at their intelligence, their IQ on IQ tests, and testosterone. And they did find an association, meaning people who had higher IQs had higher testosterone. Now, that's associational. It doesn't mean it caused it. It doesn't mean that increasing testosterone is going to make you smarter, but it tends to go hand in hand, which is interesting. Now, what causes what, we don't know. I certainly am not going to make the claim that it increases intelligence, but it's interesting that it goes hand in hand. And so a better way of putting it is this. I think testosterone, if you had to pick one marker that basically is like the best marker of male health, overall health, I would actually pick testosterone. Because if you're doing everything right, your body fat's good, your diet, your exercise, your sleep, your relationships even, right? Having regular, intercourse improves your hormone, like lifting heavy weights improves hormone. Being in an environment where it's competition is good, increases testosterone. All of these things lead to higher levels of testosterone, and it's a good marker for overall health. And obviously, if you're overall healthy, you're probably more likely to be intelligent. You're probably more likely to do better at work. So I think it's a good thing to track. And if I had to pick one way of getting as close to Bradley Cooper and Limitless as possible, I would argue it's not modafinil, it's not Adderall. It would be testosterone. I think optimal natural levels of testosterone is as close to achieving at least your physiological limit of achievement as possible. And obviously you need to tie that in with all the psychological and behavioral stuff. The great thing that you obviously promote on your podcast in talking to top performers, is you have to have the right processes in place and the right habits and behaviors to be successful, right? I have a private practice. I work exclusively with top tech CEOs, VCs, and professional athletes. These guys are on another level. A lot of them do have naturally high testosterone. Some of them are using the Maximus protocol as well, but they're also they work ridiculously hard. So it's here's the way that I put it. Testosterone is a cheat code, but you need to have the right blueprint to make sure that you execute on it.